Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Overwatch League fan thoughts and analysis video. I am still sick. Unfortunately, I actually feel worse now than I had been feeling on Wednesday or Tuesday. So, yeah, this one will be a little more chill, but this is a pretty chill topic. Anyway, I'm going to talk about what's been going on since the end of Stage 2 and looking ahead at Stage 3, potential meta changes, anything like that is what I'm going to look ahead at. So let's just jump into this by starting with taking a look at the teams that have made changes. And the first one I want to talk about is the Los Angeles Valiant, who made a pretty big change. They traded with the Florida Mayhem, and they traded away Fate, their main tank player, and in return got Shax, the Gravy, and Fact Fiction. Shax is a DPS player, of course, playing for Mayhem Academy, as were McGravy and Fact Fiction, though I don't think McGravy technically had ever gotten put back to Mayhem Academy. I think he was just on the Florida Mayhem roster still, but that's not that important. Anyway, Shax was playing for Mayhem Academy. He is another DPS player, Tracer, Widowmaker, primarily, but also, of course, plays some Zarya, since we are in a GOATS meta. I don't expect that to be any different, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But Shax brings something to the Valiant that I think they needed, which was another DPS player. Yes, they have KSF, and they have Agilities, and they have Bunny, and technically they do have Kareev as well, but Kareev is more of a flex support player. Agilities doesn't play Zarya, Bunny doesn't play Zarya. Shax, you bring someone in to create competition with KSF. He's probably an upgrade over KSF. I don't know a lot about Shax, but I would imagine that they brought him in for a reason. I do like KSF. I think KSF's a fine player, but I think you need a little bit more improvement there. And you just need a better DPS roster in general, because only having those three wasn't going to cut it for this team. So I think the addition of Shax is a very good addition for them. They added McGravy, who I don't really think we'll see a ton of, if only because they have space on this roster, and he is arguably the best main flex tank player in the league. And I definitely think he's the best non-Korean flex tank player, but you can make an argument, I think, for him being the best in the world, though I wouldn't agree. But you have someone like Space on your roster who's very good. McGravy probably won't get a ton of playtime, but I think you have him as some kind of security, and I'm sure he brings something to the table that maybe Space doesn't. We'll have to see what that is, but I'm sure there's a reason why they brought McGravy in that I'm just not seeing. The final addition is Fact Fiction, a main tank player who played sometime last season for the Houston Outlaws, but has spent the majority of his time recently with the Mayhem Academy. And Fact Fiction did play for the U.S. World Cup team in 2017. And he is a player who, like I said, played for the Houston Outlaws a little bit, but didn't play a ton. And now he's with the LA Valiant. I don't know if he will be the Valiant starting main tank. They do still have Kuki on the roster, who is a main tank player. Before he was a support player, he was a main tank player before he was playing Lucio last stage 1. So I don't know if they'll have Kuki or Fact Fiction play main tank. Kuki does have a little bit more time with this team and a little bit more chemistry than Fact Fiction does. But I don't really know who's better, because I don't think either of them were starting main tank players. I don't know if Kuki started for Soul Dynasty or not. I can't remember. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I think the addition of Fact Fiction is good. If he plays, if he doesn't play, it doesn't really matter. To me, the biggest acquisition they needed was Shax. To me, that's what they made the trade for. getting Fact Fiction um, and McGravy, I think, is just like an additional good thing that they got. I don't really think they needed to have both of them. But I think Fact Fiction is probably slightly better than Kooky, but I don't know. We'll see who plays when the stage 3 kicks off. But of course, the team that the Valiant traded with, the Florida Mayhem, have some roster changes. The first of which, of course, is that they added Fate, which is an improved main tank over Swan, in my opinion. I think Swan was possibly and arguably the worst starting main tank in the Overwatch League. They had Fate, who is a better main tank player, won World Cup 2018 with Team Korea, was on the second overall team in the season last season in terms of regular season record. So he's a very solid player. He goes on an all-Korean roster. I think he was having some issues this season, but I feel like a lot of that probably comes down to communication. Now you don't have to worry about that communication because you have an all-Korean roster. The other player they added is Byram. He is a support player. I believe he's mostly a flex support, but he does have some Moira in there. Moira is always an interesting one because sometimes Moira is a main support. Sometimes Moira is played by the flex supports. But he is a flex support player. I don't really think he'll play a ton because they have Hagapun, and I think Hagapun is the player on this team that have been playing the best. With BQB and Saya player also have been playing impressively, but I think Hagapun has been the best part of this team. So it's an interesting acquisition to me, but obviously they just need players, and that's just what's most important is having players on your roster. So I think it's a good move just to add players when you can find them. Florida Mayhem, I think, trying to improve significantly, which I like to see from a team that has been struggling a little bit. Next team that made some moves. This, to me, is the most interesting set of moves, and that is the Toronto Defiant. Formerly an all-Korean roster, they added 2 new players, Gods and Sharik. Shark, I don't really know how it's supposed to be pronounced. Gods is an American flex player, flex/DPS player. I don't know if we'll see much of him because I don't see why he would play over Envy because I think Envy has actually played pretty well. But the other player is Sharik, who is a Latvian player who plays main tank. Maybe he could play over Yakpung. I don't think Yakpung has been the best main tank in the league. I think he's been in the bottom half in terms of performance, but do you really put a Latvian player in with a bunch of Korean players? That's why maybe you start seeing Gods play a little bit more. IM37 does speak English very fluently, so you have someone who can at least translate and get communication going with the other members of the team. It's interesting that they did this. I don't know if it'll work at all. I don't know if we'll ever see these two play. We'll have to wait and see, but I think it's a very interesting move for the Toronto Defiant, and I'm intrigued to see how it goes because this is a team that had a very strong stage 1, struggled a lot in stage 2, and I don't really know what their course of action is that will make them get back to that stage 1 form. But I don't know if adding Gods and Sharik is that. So we'll see. But the final team that made a move is a Dallas Fuel. They promoted Trill to their main roster. Trill was, of course, on Team Envy. He is an Australian main tank player. So I don't know how often we will see him play because the Dallas Fuel of OGE, and I think OGE is an incredible main tank player. that I don't really think would be replaced, but I guess we'll see what happens as the season goes on. We'll see how this roster really starts to come together. The roster, the Dallas Field roster is very interesting. You have 2 Korean players, 2 French players. You have a bunch of players that represent their country. They're the only player on the team that does. Trill from Australia, Note from Canada, Zachary from the U.S., Harry Hook from Spain. You have Mickey from Thailand. You have Taimu from Finland. Like, you have a bunch of players who represent their countries. This is a very international roster. Adding Trill is an interesting one to add. I think it's a really cool player to add. We'll see what happens, but I don't know if we'll see a lot of him with how good OGE has been playing this season. I don't really see a reason why they would take him out to put Trill in, but who knows? There's always options and things that we don't understand from an outside perspective and things they might need to do. So we'll see what happens there, but I think it's an interesting move, and I like to see more Australian players get into the league. This is now 2, I believe. So very, very good for the Dallas Fuel there, bringing up another player. Next, I'm going to take a look at the changes that the game has had since Stage 2, and we'll just look at those and see how they will impact or potentially impact the game going forward and the league going forward. And there's not really a lot that changed. We'll start with Junkrat. He had a change where his projectile speed was increased from 20 to 25, and his grenades now bounce less but explode sooner. So that's a buff there. Reaper had us change to Shadow Step, where the time to exit it was reduced from 1 second to half a second. He's now invisible for the entire time it takes to exit Shadow Step. Railings and other breakable objects no longer block teleporting, but it's still disabled by Zarya's Graviton Surge and Junkrat's Steel Trap. And Symmetra had some changes to the teleporter, which is just that railings and other breakable objects are no longer blocked, or no longer block the teleporter placement. So I don't really see any of those really being a major change to the meta. Junkrat could maybe help a little bit, but I highly doubt it. And then we have Havana as a new map. That one I definitely could see having some kind of impact. We could just see more maps, and I hope that we get to see some more DPS favored maps. Maps like Junkertown, where Goats is not really the best meta. So I hope we don't see Rialto, mainly because it is a Goats map. I don't mind Rialto. It's just that I don't want another Goats map to be in the thing, so that's why I'm all in on let's just move away from that. Make things a little bit easier. And then the only other change we have, of course, in the one with the workshop, is that Baptiste's Immortality Field and Wrecking Ball's Minefield will move with platforms that they land on. So that's really it for changes. There's not really any changes that I see having a really big impact. There are, I will say this, there is currently on the PTR a patch. It's the one that adds the replays, and it does make a couple of hero changes. However, I don't see this patch going live over, by the time in the next 2 weeks. I just don't see it happening. Maybe it does. So I'll mention it anyway. It definitely could go live in the next 2 weeks, but I just don't see it happening. Seeing as usually stuff is on the PTR for quite a bit of time, but maybe they've rolled it out now to try to get it ready in 2 weeks so that they can put it out before the Overwatch League season starts or stage starts. I have no idea, but the changes that are currently in the PTR: Baptiste's Biotic Launcher has its an increased heal ammo from 10 to 12, and the Amplification Matrix duration increased from 8 seconds to 10 seconds, which is nice, because I've always found Amplification Matrix to be kind of hard to use and I'm really not a big fan of it anyway. Diva's defense matrix, they reduced the length of it from 15 meters to 10 meters. McCree's Peacekeeper had its primary fire recovery reduced from half a second to 0.4 seconds, which is nice. It is noticeably quicker when you see it like back to back. It is noticeably quicker. For Orisa, her protective barrier can now be deployed without interrupting reload. Symmetra's teleporter interact range is increased from 1 meter to 1.5 meters, and Torbjorn's secondary fire damage per pellet was reduced from 12.5 to 10.5. So that was 105 damage total per shot. So those are the changes that are on the PTR right now. I could see these changes potentially making it into the live servers before the Overwatch League Stage 3, but I don't think they will. But maybe they're going to try to get them out. Like I said, it seems to be a little too quick for me for that, just because these just went live now and the stage starts in 2 weeks, but that is definitely enough time to see it, check it, make sure it's all good. And it's not a new hero, so you don't have to make it go live in the week before, or 2 weeks before, so then you have the hero live and competitive after a certain amount of time. There's no new hero, so you can make this go live the day before the stage starts, and they could still play on that patch. So I'm sure we'll get an announcement in the next week or so. I guess week or so, whatever, where they say, hey, here's the patch we're going to be on for Stage 3, like they did with Stage 2. They gave us a patch, and they said, here's what the maps are going to be, here's what patch we're going to be on, all that kind of stuff. Here's how all the things are going to be a little bit different, the stage, all that, whatnot. I hope we get that for Stage 3, so we know what's going to happen, and we know what's going to change, but we'll see if this happens. This one will change it a little bit more, the meta, but I still don't think it's going to kill goats. I don't think anything right now is going to kill goats until we get... Right now, I think the real thing that'll kill goats is a 2-2-2 lock. Which there was all these rumors that they were going to have 2-2-2 lock in the Overwatch League, but I don't see it happening. That they were going to artificially do it, but I don't think you can artificially lock 2-2-2 because it causes problems if you do that with balancing, because heroes aren't balanced to be in a 2-2-2 system. They're balanced to be in a however you want to make this team system. So if they were to, artificially lock 2-2-2, it would cause problems with balancing. And then the Overwatch team can't really fix those problems with forced 2-2-2 because the rest of the game isn't forced 2-2-2. So the way it would work, it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. So I don't think it's going to happen. I still think we're going to have goats until we get some kind of forced 2-2-2 or some really major buffs and nerfs to heroes that somehow kill goats. But right now I don't really see that happening. I don't really know what the biggest change would be. I've seen people say with Brig you could lower her shield health, or you could reduce the amount of healing she does for herself, but she still heals everyone else the same amount. And those are things I was like, yeah, those could work, I guess, to help reduce goats a little bit, but only time will tell. But that's everything I got for you today. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing, as it helps out a lot with the channel. But I am out of here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.